And good morning, everybody. We're live. Congratulations. You made it through the week. It's Friday, and if you're here with us, welcome. Pull up a chair just a little bit. This is the Food Safety Chat, and we're here to talk about all things food safety. And if you're new to the show, what we do every week is, my name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group, and I bring on a special guest to talk about a food safety topic. And if you're a regular to this channel, you know that Jose Sabal is always a great guest to have on here with Sabal Food Safety Consulting. How you doing today, Jose?
Oh, Bryan, if I say something different from excellent, it's going to be a crime. I'm very good, my friend.
I love it. I love it. I'm in Colorado, and one of the things that we love to do here on the chat is let us know where in the world you're listening to us from. So I'm in Loveland, Colorado, USA. And this morning, we got some snow out here. This is the time of year where we tend to get more snow. Currently, it's a not too bad 21 degrees going up to 50. So normal pattern for Colorado this time of year is you'll get some snow and then it melts, and you get some snow and then it melts. And so it's not too bad. Problem is, if you get a big storm, the snow tends to be really heavy and wet, and it doesn't make for a fun experience. So hopefully we don't get any of that. And of course, you're in beautiful South Florida, where it's always beautiful and warm. How's the weather down there today?
Oh, it should be around 75 right now. The sun is very bright outside, typically here.
Just another day. Steve, nice to see you again this morning in Peoria. Nice area of the country for sure. So one of the things that we do here in the chat as well is, if you're new with us, and you'll laugh at me because I'm always chomping at the bit. And today, oh my goodness, we have so much to cover. Join us for a sip of your favorite beverage.
Yes.
And I got my cool periodic table cup here. So cheers, everyone.
And look at what my daughter did. Let me see if you can read it.
Oh, there we go. I can. Belief in your abilities. Very nice. Very nice. So one of the things in the food safety business, good morning, Megan, that it's everybody's worst nightmare, Jose, and that's a recall. And you do everything that you can do within your power if you work in quality assurance and food safety to prevent a recall from ever happening, but sometimes they do. And it's one of the things I used to tell my boss is what companies need to understand is, if something bad like this happens, it's a no-win scenario. You've already lost, and you need to get through the experience, protect the consumers, protect your company, and hopefully you come out of it okay on the other side. But there's no winning. The damage is done.
Yeah. And Bryan, just to cover the basics, the background of this, we need to keep in mind that in the food industry, and I'm saying food, including food and beverages, of course, because that is part of the definition. In the food industry, what is important is to work under sanitary conditions. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant if the product is or not adulterated, or if the product is adulterated with filth or with a hazard. It doesn't matter. Right. What is important is the sanitary conditions.
Yes. Adulteration and misbranding. And what we'll do when we go through this process today is we're going to see the hierarchy of how FDA lays this out in a warning letter. And in particular today, we're going to be talking about the example with JIF Peanut Butter. And it's one of the things that's very frustrating for me in the food safety space is we seem to keep repeating ourselves, Jose. We were talking about this a little bit before. So Peanut Corporation of America has a really bad issue with salmonella in the peanut butter. People get sick. People died as a result of that. People went to jail who worked at that company for what they did. And yet here we are again with another big case of salmonella in peanut butter.
Yeah, and as part of our conversation, Bryan, can you say that it's exactly the same? No, it's not exactly, but you know what? It's extremely similar.
Yeah, and the end result is the same: salmonella in the peanut butter, and it's a real challenge for sure. So what we wanted to do today is kind of go through this process of looking at and dissecting a recall and getting the information out of it that you can. Because from my viewpoint, unfortunately, there's no real follow-up and there's no corrective actions or information that's made public on what was done to fix the problem. So as food safety professionals, we can't go back and learn from that issue in our own backyard. So if a company has a recall, they have the issue, the recall happens, there's an investigation, FDA issues a report, the company goes back and fixes things, and we never hear anything else. I want to see what they did. So unfortunately, we have to guess. And everything that we're going through here today is all public information. And these are things that can help point you in the right direction, but it's not ultimately where we want to be. And the example, Jose, that I use is air traffic, right? The National Transportation Safety Board. If there's an airplane wreck, they go out, they do an investigation, and then they issue a report on what happened. Was it pilot error? Was there a problem with the airplane? Was it bad training? And then they correct. And as a result of that, the airline industry and plane flights year after year after year get safer and safer and safer. And it's safer to fly in an airplane now than it is to drive around in your car. They're improving. And one of the complaints that we see all the time is, why do recalls keep happening? Why do we keep doing the same things? And this, in my opinion, is a big reason why.
Yeah, it is possible. One of the things that I did, Bryan, for this class, as part of the typical investigation that we do when we're trying to look into root causes of the problem, is, okay, I search a little bit on those that are responsible, just going into the, LinkedIn and try to search who are they, what they do, etc. And of course, they are very prepared people. I mean, the plant manager has a master in business administration.
Wow.
But I mean, we need to be careful because this is about food safety. And I fully understand that in order to manage a company, a business, of course, you need to be very well versed in business. Yes, of course. But you know what? In food, the safety of the food goes first than the business.
Absolutely. There's no decision to be made. And one of the things I would use to talk with my quality managers about is there's two main categories of information that we supply to the company. The first is food quality. And these are the different parameters of what makes it acceptable. As we drink our favorite beverages, there's certain expectations we have for quality. It has a certain taste, aroma, and if it's not right, we complain. Within quality assurance, getting that data to that management team to make the right business decision and protect the brands and the consumers is very important. The other bucket, of course, then is food safety. And this is not a decision on, how much risk are we willing to take? No, the answer is zero. And if there's a potential food safety risk, the company needs to be extremely aggressive and say yes or no. And so the language I would use with my quality managers is, if it's a food safety issue, it's yes, no, right? There's no other options. And we are the moral authority associated with helping the company understand these decisions, which is why it's so critical to continue having these messages and get more information through chats like this. So thank you for being here, everyone. And learning and conveying this information, because part of this too, Jose, is if we're food safety professionals and we're holding this information in and not sharing it in the organization, we're doing a big disservice.
Yeah. Because I mean, like we were saying in other chats, Bryan, food safety is not a competition.
No.
Food safety should be shared between all of us in order to prevent these things from happening.
Yeah. So what we wanted to do is kind of dive in here and really go through kind of the process, and you will see how to properly dissect a 43, which sometimes can be hard to get a hold of, and a warning letter of what it is that FDA is looking for and how they're responding to things. Now, what we're doing is we're kind of looking at this from one side of the conversation, because in some cases, we're not seeing the actual response that J.M. Smucker gave to FDA for their 483. Yeah. We're seeing FDA's response to their response. So we have to kind of fill in the blanks in some areas that way too. So with that, one of the things I wanted to look at too is the hazards associated with peanut butter. So if you look at, and I'll put the link in here for this, FDA's Appendix 1, FDA has gone through and been helpful and said, hey, here's some of the hazards you need to consider if you're making peanut butter. Now, that doesn't mean it's all inclusive and that your work is done. This is the starting point. So within peanuts, physical, right? Obviously, this is something coming from the ground, so stones and these type of things need to be removed. Chemical, mycotoxins. So if peanuts are sitting around and they get wet and mold grows, you can have mycotoxin. There have been recalls on the past for that as well. And of course, salmonella. Salmonella is a huge risk in peanut butter. And we didn't know this 20 years ago. And through hard experience, we picked this up, and now we understand the salmonella can really survive in peanut butter for long, long periods of time. And peanut butter has a long shelf life. So you have to be very, very aware of that and understand that. And we've seen issues in the past, and we'll see this in the letters too, Jose, is post-roasting contamination. Huge issue for plants. And when you're making peanut butter, it's a pretty, you can look at it relatively simply, right? You bring in the peanuts, you sort for color, you roast, peel, grind, add in other things, sugar stabilizers, things like this, cool, degas, fill it, and off it goes. And the big risk with peanut butter is this is a continuous process. So you have really, really big runs. And if you're making JIF peanut butter, you have gigantic runs of peanut butter. And that's the efficiency you need in the process. To your point, Jose, is there's the operational aspects of how do we make this product and make it cost effectively, because if it's too expensive to make, that doesn't matter. And how can we do it safely? And those are the two things that need to be considered.
And you know what, Bryan? When you were discussing about the hazards, I'm going to, for a second, focus on the biological ones. And you mentioned salmonella. So one of the things that is very important for us to focus, according to the Preventive Control for Human Food Regulation, which is the one applicable to the manufacturing of peanut butter, okay, is that FDA says that it is our responsibility to identify hazards from all of the different sources. One of the sources is the raw peanuts. Can we receive raw peanut with salmonella? Yeah, because they're coming from the field. Yeah, that's okay. And that's the reason why there is a roaster. The roaster is, in theory, supposed to, and I'm going to cite the specific type of control that these companies are supposed to have, is supposed to reduce to an acceptable level. You are not eliminating salmonella from the product. And that is very important because that is part of what is written in the 483 and the warning letter. The roasting process is a process to reduce to an acceptable level. So it's going to depend on many parameters. In this case, the temperature of the oven, the speed of the bell, most likely they have a continuous roaster, most likely, and also the depth of the bed of the peanuts that are going to be roasted. So depending on how you move that, I'm going to say the device on the roaster that is going to determine what is the depth of the peanut on top of that conveyor, that is critical component. And it should be checked with a certain frequency. Now, even after checking with that frequency, unless you are 100% that there is no movement, that the belt maintains, the peanut perfectly, throughout the process. If you have a little bit of movement, you may have inside that belt a little bit of peaks. And then those peaks, oh my goodness, if you use the critical control point, it is possible that you are not going to get enough destruction in those higher or thicker spaces. And that's one of the reasons why normally I recommend people to go a little bit above. I know that in some cases it's not that good because the quality could be affected. Yes, I agree. But at least we should be doing as much as possible, try to use something that is a little bit better.
Exactly.
And that one source is the field. But the second source, which is salmonella also, is the environment. Now, you do not control the environmental hazard with your roasting process. How do you control that? And that is the reason why in the regulation it specifically says, whenever you are making ready-to-eat products exposed to the environment before packaging, on all of those steps, you must set up a sanitation preventive control to make sure that the environment is clean enough to safely produce food.
Exactly. And again, if you have a ready-to-eat food, you have to do environmental monitoring. It's a requirement. So you need to be looking at your prerequisites and your preventive controls associated with this. And we're going to take a look at that and compare that. So keep that little piece in mind there. So the other piece of this before we dive in is what type of audits are FDA performing, right? There's two big categories. There is for cause, and then there's what they call GMP audit. So GMP audit is, okay, here we're here for our routine look at your facility. And ideally, FDA is coming to that facility every year or two to check it out. A for cause audit means that something happens that FDA gets wind of, and they're like, ooh, this is not good. We need to go to this facility and see what's going on. This audit and the follow-up ones that took place during this period of time were for cause. So FDA got information back saying that people were getting sick from peanut butter. And they're like, uh-oh, right? So they're like, we don't want another repeat of PCA. So we're going to dive into this right away. So Francisco had a question here. Thank you. We love getting questions on here. This is why we're here. So Jose, did you mean your recommendation is below that upper limit to ensure reduction of the bacteria? So making sure it's not above the upper limit in the bed.
Yeah, and yes, Francisco, briefly, let's say, and I'm going to create some random numbers. Let's say that the oven must be at 200 degrees. The speed of the belt must be 2 feet per minute. And let's say that the thickness of the bed must be, I don't know, 5 inches, 10 inches, whatever that is. Once you say these are the numbers, is because that should be the outcome of a process authority testing in different places of the thickness of that peanuts going through the roster, if they are getting the right temperature to to reduce to an acceptable level salmonella. So everything that is being done is just a test. Now, statistically, when you apply statistics to the process, if you perform that test 1, 2, 3, 4 times, you get an idea, but you are not going to get effective number, because all of these things that I'm mentioning about the working conditions inside the oven, they happen. And in quality, this is a quality approach. It's what is called the common variations. And we will need to test that oven, I'm going to say between 100 and 200 times in order to more or less arrive to the real curve of the behavior of the oven. And once you have that, what you're going to get, the average of that line is going to be your new critical control point, which is above the actual numbers that you need to achieve. And on top of that, you will need to take into consideration the accuracy, the precision of the instrument that you're using, and add that on top of that first variation. And still, you are checking the critical component. You're not checking the operational one. Right.
And the critical control point is a yes or a no, right? It's not, oh, we're kind of close. That's a line you cannot cross. So you need to make sure that you're far enough above it to take that variability into consideration. So another example of that is pasteurization with dairy products. So yes, you may be able to pasteurize at 164F for 15 seconds. Great. Are you ever going to run at 164? No, you're running at 170 for 20 seconds because you want to make sure that that variability is covered.
Yep, exactly right. And Francisco is saying CCP validation. Francisco, I agree 100% with you, but I prefer to use the new names because HACCP is not applicable to this company. What is applicable to this company is the preventive control for human food, and they are not going to set up a CCP. They are going to set up a process preventive control that needs validation. Yes.
Yeah, good questions, Francisco. Thank you very much. A great explanation. You can tell that Jose is a very good teacher. So let's show here. One of the things I like to do when I'm digging in and doing a little detective work is, what does the plant look like? So here is a pretty Google shot of Google Maps of the facility in Lexington, Kentucky. And like most facilities, and so of course, as you would expect, JIF Peanut Butter, huge, right? Huge brand. This plant is gigantic. This is a big, big plant. And if you do street view, Jose, going down the street, this is one gigantic brick wall going for blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks. And you can see how this plant has grown over time. So it looks like, right, so you start here, and they built on some additions, right? You can tell the roofs here are newer. Obviously over here, right, this is your warehousing and shipments out. You have all these loading bays, train cars. So they're bringing in the peanuts by the train load, right, as you would expect.
Yep.
So they bring these in and they unload these, and then they're producing their product in this process. So it gives a nice little overview of what the plant looks like. So this plant, you can see the employee parking over here and things like that, is big plant.
Huge.
Lots of things to monitor. And so as part of that is, if you're looking at environmental contamination, you can just see from this aerial shot, lots of ways for things to get in. And salmonella is ubiquitous in the environment. It's everywhere. So you have to be very careful with that. So FDA came into the facility based upon 4 cause. They're hearing reports of illness, and then they started their investigation. And as part of that, and what we're going to be going over here today, is the 483. So as part of that, one of the things that FDA will issue then is 483, and these things can be hard to get a hold of. You can do a Freedom of Information Act with FDA and request it, and then wait for quite a bit of time, and you're going to have to pay a little bit of money for that. There's also companies out there that will sell you the 483. And just for my audience here, right, Jose, I went out and opened my wallet and I bought the actual 483 file from FDA for the facility for this audit. So we're going to take a look at this now. So this is somewhere, where are you? So window, there we are. So we will share and look at, here it is, the actual warning letter from FDA for the audit. So you can see here, Jose, they were in the plant. What here? Look, it looks like what? So 3-4 weeks almost in the facility.
12 days. I got that for you, Bryan. 12 days of audits.
And so this, you'll notice here, this is addressed to the senior person at the facility. So in this case, the plant manager, and the location of the plant. And what I've gone through here is highlighted. The highlights in here are mine of what FDA noted in this. And one of the things that FDA will do within these is they segment things into regulatory oversight, GMPs, and process controls. So let's take a look at this and dive in. So, and you'll notice here, look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people from FDA were present for this inspection. And so specifically, so as we're talking about here, they did not identify the hazard of recontamination with salmonella, providing a preventive control. So this is what we're talking about, is post-roasting, you guys are having problems. So your ready-to-eat product is exposed to the environment during multiple processes. So cleanings, blanching, sorting, feeders, reclaim, where applicable. A hazard analysis must evaluate the probability that the hazard will occur in the absence of preventive controls.
Yeah.
So they're saying there's lots of points here that we saw in May that are showing the potential to recontaminate your product after the roasting step. And so you notice here as well, these things here. What is this? Well, these are redactions. So FDA will try, sometimes they don't necessarily know what is correct or not, but they will redact. And this is FDA redaction, not JM Smucker. So they will go through, if there are things in this that they deem to be proprietary or sensitive information for that facility, they'll block that out. So that's what you're seeing there on that side. So now to your point, Jose, environmental monitoring. So you're okay, great. You're taking swabs and you're finding positives. And salmonella, if anybody is familiar with this in the environmental monitoring process in facilities, salmonella can be sometimes very, very difficult to remove. It can be hard.
Yes.
Salmonella is tough. And
yeah,
to your point,
and you know what, Bryan? Now that you're talking about that, well, salmonella is difficult. I will say I'm very familiar with seafood processing facilities, and over there we have listeria. And again, it is very difficult to remove listeria from the environment. I agree, but you know what is one really very difficult thing about salmonella in peanut butter? Oh my goodness, that this product is going to attach is very sticky. It's going to stick to everywhere, every surface.
Good point. Good point. Very hard to clean. It is very hard to clean. So then within this 483, FDA says, okay, well, you found positives. You found positives on the floor, the peanut exit, in this floor, wherever this is, on this date, on this date, on this date, you found more. And then going back through 2019, at the floor at the entrance, at the floor in the east side by the roaster, floor, stairs. What these are telling me, Jose, is it's being tracked around the plant. So people are walking through different areas. And again, guys, this is our speculation. We're guessing based upon the information. We weren't there. So it's one of the best ways for environmental contamination to be spread in a facility is people.
Yeah. Yeah. And Bryan, people moving and then also equipment. If you have something moving, some equipment, some pallet jacks and forklift and that kind of stuff, and those wheels are going and you have some very sticky peanut butter in one place, oh my goodness, that is going to end up everywhere.
Exactly. And then FDA says, in addition, your peanut butter sampling procedure consists of taking, sampling. And so there's a generalized sampling program where you're looking at n number of samples per size, which is what it looks like they're following here. And they said, you found salmonella in your peanut butter. So the environmental sample could have moved to it from there, or to your point, Jose, it could have come in with the peanuts themselves. But FDA is saying, you are finding it directly in your peanut butter on this date. And look how far back in time they're going, 2017. You found it then. You found it in 18. You found it twice in 2020. Is this problem getting better or worse? This is getting worse. 21, a couple of times. Now look at 22. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times in 2022. And additionally, this strain of salmonella was isolated during FDA's environmental sampling of your facility. So FDA in 2010 did a swabathon, and they got whole genome sequencing sampling. And guess what? FDA then took that data and did epidemiological work in lab data showing that that strain is the source, right? So FDA here, I find this very interesting. FDA is using very strong language here. You may be the source. It could be. No, FDA is saying your facility is the source. Right? In FDA's mind, you are the source of this outbreak.
Yeah. The company is working under insanitary conditions, which, by the way, is a prohibited act in the law.
Absolutely. And so in May, right, so now they're at the plant, we observed that you did not address contaminated or potentially contaminated finished peanut butter distributed to consumers. Ooh, that's bad. You did not take measures based upon this information, right? Look at these positives up here. You did not take information to alert consumers, and you did not tell us at FDA that this was going on.
Yeah, and I believe that there is also the reportable food registry, because that is also mandatory. Anyone that is going through a problem like that, they must go and report that in the RFR.
Yes, so FDA has laid out a very strong case here, saying that we found these environments. So you found it in your product. We cross-corroborated this. You are the source. Observation 2, your equipment and utensils were not designed to be adequately cleaned or maintained against this sanitation. So in 2021 and 22, the facility found water, 4-foot by 8-foot puddle under a roaster and other ones, right? So these roasters were installed and utilized, whatever has been redacted. So again, as we were talking about, after, right? So now we've got this post-roasting contamination threat. And they found a defective flange, which was letting in water. So environmental salmonella getting into the facility and being tracked around. So roasting in the CIP cycles conducted during this time period went back into production. And guess what? They found inline samples of finished products, so it didn't work. So they found a problem. They thought they fixed it. They went back and did more sampling, Jose. Didn't fix it.
And I was answering Teresa while you were explaining. Teresa was saying if they didn't went to the reportable food waste rate, that's exactly what the 483 says, Teresa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right. And so this continues down, right? So positive, salmonella positive, salmonella positives, salmonella positives on the ready-to-eat peanut butter. Here's the date of the inspections. And then FDA.
I have that summary for you, Bryan. The FDA team were 3 investigators, 1 national expert, and 1 consumer safety technician. 5 people, 12 days.
Right. And a 5-page 483, that's a very long 483. And so now FDA hands the 483 to the facility and says, you got some problems. You have 15 days, 15 working days, not calendar days, 15 working days to respond in writing to FDA on what you're going to do about this. And what's unique about this, and we'll see this in the next piece of information we're going to go over, is this facility responded not once, twice, 3. They responded back to FDA 4 times, Jose, 4 times. Yeah. So in other words, the facility responded and FDA said, what? No, no. We have more questions. And then they responded again and no. And this got to the point then where it progressed to a warning letter because FDA finally said, no. Your actions are inadequate. We are going to issue a warning letter to you. And same thing, right? 15 days. Now, at this point in time, right, so FDA is escalating this process. Yeah. After a warning letter, if they're not satisfied, they can issue an injunction. They can impound your product. They can go to court proceedings. You name it. It's very, very serious.
Yep. So do you have the copy of the warning letter, Bryan? Oh, okay.
Here's the actual warning letter. And you'll notice, and one of the things here that's very important is now it's not addressed to the plant manager like it was on the 483. This is addressed to the CEO of the company. And this is in my notes here, and sorry about my crappy handwriting, but I've written here on the side, the PARC doctrine. What FDA is saying here is, Mr. Mark T. Smucker, you are the most senior responsible person in this company for oversight of the control of food safety. You are responsible. And FDA says under the PARC doctrine, you are personally responsible. Ask the former CEO of Bluebell Ice Cream who had that big Listeria recall if that's true or not. He is in court. He is being held personally responsible. He's retired. He's been retired for years. And the court proceedings continue to go on. He is being taken to court by FDA and the Department of Justice under the PARC doctrine. So Mr. Smucker is being put on notice here. You need to fix this, and we are holding you responsible for this.
It's personal responsibility, Bryan. If Bill Marler is here with us right now, he will say this is a strict product liability. That's what he was going to say, and it's personal responsibility.
Absolutely. And so now it goes through within the warning letter. So you can see here for the 483, we were talking about investigation that took place in the middle of 22. So all of the back and forth took place. Now FDA has issued in January of this year, so very recently, this warning letter for the 483. So one of the things, based upon, I've written here for cause, right? This was a for-cause inspection because of the illnesses. So FDA will then lay out in this warning letter their authority, right? So one of the things that Jose is really, really good at is when we have these chats, he always goes back to what is the reference to authority, what is the standard, and what is the legal obligation, and what are the references associated with that. And this is what FDA always does.
Yeah.
So within this, right, for this facility, the inspection was initiated as part of an outbreak investigation. So FDA was going in for cause. They had issues. And according to CDC, 21 people from 17 states were affected with the outbreak strain that they linked. And your firm then in May recalled all peanut butter manufactured between October and May. That's a lot of product.
And you know what, Bryan? Let me catch you over there. Look at this one. Why all the product manufactured? Because the hazard is in the environment. Mm-hmm. So even if they have another line producing any other product in that same facility, that other product will need to be recalled too. Because it's about the environmental conditions. It's not about a hazard that is coming with an ingredient that is going to be controlled. It's the environment.
Yeah. And with peanut butter manufacturing, again, right, this is a continuous manufacturing process. So you have very long runs. So your risk from a food safety standpoint is also very high because FDA always looks from CIP to CIP. And to your point, Jose, because you had environmental contamination and failure within the preventive and prerequisite programs, FDA is saying everything. No, you guys are out of control. You need to bring it all back.
And another thing, Bryan, the last time that we were having this conversation 2 weeks ago, 2 Fridays ago, so we were comparing GFSI with the FDA. And we were talking about approved suppliers and recalls. Well, this is another difference, okay? What is going on? Why these things are happening? Because if you follow GFSI is telling you that as part of the GNPs, you are supposed to have a cleaning and sanitation program, and you're supposed to create a schedule, and you're supposed to have SSOPs, and your SSOPs must be validated, and so on. And in the food safety section of the GFSI program that you're following, it says, according to your risk assessment, you need an environmental monitoring program. Yes, all of the GFSI components are matching with the requirements of the FDA. But the thing is that this is different because if you have an environmental hazard in GFSI, as long as you are doing some cleaning and sanitation and you have your environmental monitoring program in place, you should be fine. But FDA goes one step above and says, if your product is ready to eat, exposed to the environment before packaging, and the product is going to be by, in this case, general population. So we have the young, the elderly, the pregnant women, and so on, exposed to the eating that, they're going to be the ones that are most affected. Most likely, the severity is going to be increased just because of the group of people. For that reason, that hazard, 99% is going to end up as a significant hazard. I should not be using that word because that is the hazard approach. I should be using that salmonella in a facility with those conditions is a hazard that requires a preventive control. That is the official name. And for that reason, companies that are producing that kind of products, they need to have sanitation preventive controls, which is what? A cleaning procedure is an SSOP, but oh my goodness, you need to validate the frequency based on sampling and testing from your environmental monitoring to determine what is the right frequency to prevent the occurrence of that environmental hazard.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so within this process, FDA has then said in this letter that you failed. You have failed in this process because under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, to your point, you have introduced adulterated product into interstate commerce. So FDA needs to establish interstate commerce for their authority. If you're a company that only sells product within your particular, city, let's say, and it never leaves that state, that's a state issue. FDA needs to establish authority under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act for interstate commerce.
Hold on, Bryan, let me catch you over there. So I'm reading a book. I'm getting into this legal and regulatory side deep, for the last 2.5 years or so. I'm reading a book right now that regarding that thing, yes, the product will need to go into interstate in order for the FDA to have enforcement power to say so. But you know what? The book is saying that all of the states individually adopted that same policy internally. So anyone that is already working under a sanitary condition, it doesn't matter if it's all within the city or the county or the state or interstate, the product is adulterated and is a prohibited act.
Good call out. Good call out.
Yeah.
So they had said then that, okay, based upon the FD&C Act, and then they also then go back and say, based upon ready-to-eat manufacturing as part of 402A of the Act, and then they also say that it was contaminated with filth and injurious to health. In addition, failure of the owner-operator in charge to comply with preventive controls, as you just said, as the CGMPs and the preventive control rules is prohibited. As a conclusion, we have issued a 483, and we received your responses on July 1, August 1, August 16th, August 4th. Notice the dates between these, right? Roughly 15 days. Describing the corrective actions taken and planned. And FDA said, after reviewing the findings, we are issuing this letter. So FDA is saying, no good, right? We hear you saying these things, and we'll go over this next. It's not enough, right? You're failing. And you'll kind of see here, Jose, on the side, I've kind of written these bars because I don't want to highlight the whole paragraph because they're FDA is saying a whole lot here.
Yes.
So this first part here caught my attention. During routine monitoring of the whole genome sequencing, FDA identified recent isolates. So FDA was monitoring fingerprints, and so people are getting sick. And then doctors are sending in samples, and they're comparing the genetic fingerprint that they have on file. Remember, FDA did swabathons at this facility, so they knew the organisms. And they identified clinical isolates, and then they're off to the races, right? So now FDA has cause. So FDA identified this. The plant didn't tell them. FDA found out about it. And they reviewed the inspections and started looking at this and saying the whole genome sequencing in 2010, right? This is going back a while now. Look at that. Were found to match. And FDA says they deployed supplemental peanut butter focused questionnaire. So in total, 21 cases in 17 states. Of those 13 that reported, all the people reported JIF brand peanut butter exposure. And this is why sometimes epidemiological work and things like this is hard, right? Because you got to go back through it and say, okay, all right, Jose, you got sick. What did you eat? Oh gosh,
what did you eat?
I don't remember what I ate last week, right? So it takes time to go back and figure out for these poor people that got sick what happened. So there were 21 people who got sick. Luckily, nobody died from this, so we were fortunate for that.
Yeah.
So then, based upon this, your finished product records from January of 21 to February of 22, right? So 13 months indicated you detected salmonella in your ready-to-eat product on numerous occasions. In here, right, they start listing all these out, and your corrective actions were not sufficient. And then FDA starts going into the actual details for these individual issues. And oh my goodness, right? To identify the leak in the air intake. So what they're doing is they're taking the information from the 483. They got responses back. They were inadequate. And FDA is going back and reiterating those again and saying, oh, come on, here's what we're seeing. Salmonella detected in your products. And when this issue first came out, Jose, I heard about the environmental hits with JIF. I didn't hear about the product. So I find that very interesting.
Yeah, and you know what, Brian? Going back for a second to the 483, you have two observations. Observation one is about the environmental. Observation two is about the equipment, the adequacy of the equipment for the process and being an equipment that is hygienically designed in a way that is going to be easily maintained and easily cleanable, because that is exactly what is written in 117.40. It's exactly what is there. So if you go back, and I'm going back to all of those 9 years of auditing that I did, what is the most typical approach to GMP inspections? They are being done on a monthly basis. Everybody is doing that on a monthly basis. And I'm going to say why. If the source of this was rain that's coming in, and you may have, I believe that there is some description about the ceilings having some water, allowing water coming in from the outside and that kind of stuff. And I got to say, well, hold on. Why you are going to inspect the ceilings if you're concerned about water coming in from the outside on a monthly basis if you're working, for example, in Vegas? In Vegas, it's going to rain twice per year, and that's it. If you check monthly, you're going to get zero and get zero and get zero. No water is coming in. Why? Because it's dry. Now, if you perform the same monthly inspection here in Florida, where it rains each and every single day of the year, you are going to see it. Why waiting a month in order to check for water coming in? It doesn't make any sense. So even the frequencies that are being assigned to the inspections of the GMP does not make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, you need to look at these type of things. And part of this, and a good call on this too, right? As you read through this information, they were installing new equipment. And so one of the things that gets missed a lot of time is that maintenance process. Right? So you have new people coming in the plant, you're tearing out stuff, you're digging out stuff, you're causing lots of disruption. So that can be part of it too. And as part of this, they identified this leak. And so this is now getting in the plant. And so, wow, I mean, product, sample composites, on all of these different type of things. So in February, you detected salmonella using your standard number of samples. And then they came back, and this caught my attention. And my note here is quality control does not equal food safety. This is what we were going back to before. You indicated that even when the additional samples were negative, we destroy, this is JIF talking, Smucker, we destroy all production lots to provide further assurance that we have bracketed and eliminated. So what does that mean? Remember, peanut butter runs long runs. So they said, oh, well, we had these hits within these production runs for salmonella in product. We will destroy what we found, and we'll go out a little bit farther around that to hopefully catch everything else. And was that working? Doesn't look like it, right? We keep getting more hits.
According to the warning letter, it was not working.
Right. And so what FDA was saying is your corrective action did not adequately prevent the contaminated product from reaching consumers. So normally, if you have an issue, and what you're going to be looking at from a crisis management standpoint is from your CIP, all right, I have clean equipment, and now I've shut down and I'm going to re-clean this equipment and get ready for my next production cycle, CIP to CIP. Because peanut butter is such long production runs, that's gigantic. And so what they tried to say is, okay, well, within the CIP to CIP cycle, we're going to bracket this and remove this. And FDA is like, no, it didn't work. You're still seeing this.
And actually, in the warning letter, they're asking for validated evidence that they can do this. And you know why it's not going to work, Bryan, in my opinion, personal, is because if the hazard is environmental, it doesn't matter if you choose a little bit more or a little bit less. Like you said, if you do not go back to the last CIP cleaning, you are not going to stop, everything from getting adulterated potentially.
Yep. And one of the first things FDA will look at if you do that, and which is the approach you should take almost in all cases, is what about rework? What about cleaning up?
Good point.
To your point, Jose, peanut butter is sticky and difficult to clean. Is everything really clean? But rework is one of those things that does what I call it jumps over the wall. It jumps over that CIP break. And so a lot of times when you see recalls that are expanded, that's what FDA has identified. The product that the company recalled didn't cover the entire period of exposure, or you had rework that jumped the wall and you have a lot more product in question than you thought. And the FDA here is saying is what you removed was insufficient. You did not bracket correctly.
Yep.
And you can see here, right? So from this July response, right? So they're going through this process. Hold would have been an effective approach to identify by contamination of your continuous production of ready-to-eat peanut butter. As part of your response, we ask that you provide support. Okay, well, you bracketed. What makes you think that worked? Right?
Yeah.
They're going to have a real hard time showing that.
You know what? Teresa is put another comment there in the chat saying, your thoughts about zone 1 pathogen. Oh, really? Bryan, do you want to answer that? What is in the inspections in operation manual of the FDA?
They sample. Chapter 4, FDA Inspection Operations Manual. Read it, right? FDA samples zone 1 and zone 2. In a nutshell, should you be sampling zone 1 and 1, 2? If you have a ready-to-eat high-risk product like this, yes.
Yes.
Now, that is a very generic, large statement. Every situation is different. So you need to, that's why we have food safety plans and hazard analysis. So look at your individual cases.
Yep. But yes, Teresa, the simple answer is that under very controlled conditions, you should be testing zone 1. The FDA will do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Either you do it or they do it. And remember, under the now regulatory standard for enhanced traceability for high-risk foods, is peanut butter on that list, Jose? You need to be able to trace backwards through the system, right? So that's coming too. So this is additional things that JIF needs to be looking at in the future, just as a side. So you can see my little guy here in the middle. I got my face, right? In July, your response discussed actions the facility has taken to address the deficiencies, including additional recontamination as a requirement of the sanitation preventive control. So in other words, before that point in time, they weren't looking at it. Where RTD product is exposed to the environment and will not receive additional kill. However, you did not provide a revised hazard analysis or plan for evaluation. So, okay, we're going to do this, FDA. Okay, show us that you did it.
Yeah, show me. Show me. And going back to the chat, Bryan, for a second. So Teresa is asking, is it necessary to validate the cleaning process? Yes, you need to validate it. And don't get confused with that slide in the preventive control for human food. I'm teaching that class a lot. That says, oh, don't worry. You don't need to validate allergen preventive controls and you don't need to validate cleaning procedures and so on. Well, in quotes, you don't need to validate them because there is no way that you can prove zero, which should be the scope. So, for example, if you say, I'm going to be using whatever, coliforms, what is the most accurate test that, using the most accurate test for most probable number, you cannot read anything below 3 most probable number for, I don't recall if it's coliforms or E. coli, something like that.
Oh, yeah. So MPN testing, most probable number, when you're doing the serial dilutions with your tubes, 3 per gram or 0.3, I think is the lowest you can get.
Okay. So, but I mean, 0.3 or 3, it doesn't matter right now, Bryan. Can you say that you effectively clean if you can only measure 3? No, because you might have 2.5. Okay, so that is the reason why FDA says, okay, you cannot validate this because you will need to prove 0. But there is a way that we can validate in quotes by selecting the best methodology and the most accurate test and test against that. And the answer is yes, Teresa, we should be doing that. And regarding Steve, that is saying we perform random pathogen testing on finished product. I will say that it's okay to verify the effectiveness of your process if you're testing finished product. But remember the HACCP approach by default is intended so we do not need to test finished goods. We're supposed to be making sure that our process is effective in each and every single step so we do not rely on finished product testing.
Right. Finished product testing, anytime you need to have the programs in place to prevent that, right? So just doing random checks is not going to be adequate. FDA would not like that. And again, right, we just see the same pattern over and over again with these. And now we're at February of 18. Guess what? Swabs, roof leaks, increased foot traffic, spreading this stuff around. In your response from July, right, your root cause determinations were not provided in your response. In addition, this I was like, holy moly. So FDA is also saying here, in addition, we have the following comments. So if we haven't taken you to task enough already, here's some other things that we want to say as well. We are concerned that the history of events associated with water in your facility and the results of the whole genome sequencing suggest that salmonella may be resident within your facility. An example, right? In your responses here, you dedicated that there are no conditions conducted for growth on equipment due to the presence of water, moisture, So you provided your right to run inspection procedure. All of this, FDA is saying, we recommend you consider all of these type of things. And this really caught my attention here, Jose, is we recommend that you consider incorporating whole genome sequencing as a tool to investigate pathogen isolates. Wow.
I read it.
Wow. So FDA is saying you need to start using the tools that we're using to track this stuff. Because you need to figure out.
Brian, you know why they're saying that? Because if you identify that you have a resident pathogen, you need to know exactly what is the DNA in order to determine if your product at the end, by assuming that you perform some finished product testing just to verify the effectiveness of your process, is adulterated with an environmental pathogen or with a pathogen as a result of a lack of effectiveness in the roasting process, which is a second source. And you can identify that by using DNA.
Right. So you need that fingerprint. Now, this paragraph, and this is editorial comment from me, is this one here that is I'm calling lawyer BS. So when you read this, you can tell that legal people have been going through this and trying to write it in a way that is pretty and may limit liability, and it fails. So we stated that in very rare instances, you find salmonella in finished product. Well, that should be never, right? Specifically, right? So when you read through this language is we have a robust finished product testing program. No, you don't, because you keep finding it, right? So this lawyer language in this paragraph doesn't help them at all. If anything else, this is probably making FDA a little ticked off. And you know that because they put this language from their responses in the warning letter. So FDA is saying, really? And now, right? So they've gone through here, and I put a question mark here because in addition, in July, response detecting this to remove the peanut butter from the lines between this point in this time and the piping and other equipment used to process, although effective at removing large amounts, and this is your point, Jose, are not an effective means of eliminating salmonella. So what they did is they went through and tried to clean some equipment and they pulled stuff out manually. They're saying it didn't work. Now, whew, holy moly, right? So now FDA is closing this out by saying, okay, Mr. Smucker, you've got 15 days to respond to us. And do it. They have 6 pages of things to respond to.
Yeah.
And this letter is dated
January 23rd? Oh, 24th. Yeah.
Right. So we're up to that point. So hopefully they get a good response and they'll be able to figure this out because, wow, Jose.
Yeah. I mean, like you said at the beginning, all of this is public information, and we're trying to read whatever is there. There is a lot of information that we're missing because we don't have any of the communication from smokers. We're just reading what the FDA is saying about those communications and trying to provide you with our opinion. But in my opinion, the problem that we have is that for, oh my God, I don't want to say centuries because it's going to be an exaggeration, but for a lot of years, we have been using the HACCP approach very lightly. We are not considering really all of the potential sources of hazard that will become hazard that require a preventive control. And that is the reason why when the FDA created FSMA, they say, we're going to force this into people. Anyone that is producing ready to eat, exposed to the environment before packaging, you must have sanitation preventive controls, and you need to verify the effectiveness of those controls with an environmental monitoring program.
Right.
And of course, checking the environment. It's not just going to Teresa's comment, it's not just checking zone 1. How zone 1 is going to be contaminated or adulterated because your environment is not clean enough. You are not cleaning the floors and the drains and the walls and the ceilings frequent enough to prevent that, bacteria from going there. The flow of the people, the flow of the traffic of the facility, we should be putting emphasis on watching how we're doing that right now, and if there is any way to improve that flow.
Yep. Okay, so oh boy, this hour has gone by so fast, and I'm sorry everyone, but we've thrown just an absolute avalanche of information at you. Bottom line here is that this facility failed in their food safety plan. They failed in their employee practices. They failed in their equipment management. They failed in the environmental monitoring program, and they failed in their responses when they found failures that caused adulteration of their product and put the consumers at risk. And it's no wonder FDA wrote a 6-page warning letter showing them what they need to do. This is a serious wake-up call, right? This needs to be fixed. And I Smucker is an outstanding company, and I'm sure they will.
Yes.
But these type of things, right? We need to learn from these is the whole point of this. And one of the things to close out here is in the locals group that I have, which is free. I'm going to post this information, Jose, in this group. So the 483 in the warning letter with my comments on there so that you can download this. So I'm pulling out most of the link information because I think LinkedIn drops this out. So it's the Food Safety Foundation.locals.com. Membership free, right? Go there. I put information for recalls and these type of things so that you can have this information too. So with that, we got to close out here today. Any upcoming courses or things that you're teaching, Jose, that you want people to be aware of?
Oh my goodness. Anyone that wants to attend any of these classes, just send me an email. It's on your screen and let me know what you want. And, I will be very happy to let you know which classes I'm teaching and who's sponsoring those classes. And I will give you the information to register for those classes.
Excellent. Excellent. And again, as Jose pointed out, and this is something we say on the chat quite a bit, food safety is not a point of competition. So take this information and use this to help make things better for you and better within the industry, right? We all need to learn from these types of situations. So with that, we'll close out this very information-heavy food safety chat for this week. And we will be back next week at the same time. So 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And we'll have the next food safety chat. And we do this on a live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So if whatever platform you like to use, we do this for you. And thank you, everybody, for all these amazing comments and back and forth. This was really, really a great one. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did, and you're pulling some information out of this as well. So with that, we'll close out the chat. Thank you again, Jose. Always fantastic. I love having you on the chat.
It was my pleasure, Bryan. You know that I love to be here all of the time.
And thank you to everyone who attended. We know that an hour of your work week is a big investment of time, and hopefully it's of value to you. So we will see you back here next week, and enjoy your weekend, everybody. Have a great one.
Bye-bye. Good luck.